Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Yoduck, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. We turn the page on the first hour. Ray Ferraro will join us. We'll get Ray's take on the game Saturday, what he sees happening with the Leafs moving forward. Sounds like Travis Green could be the new man in charge in Ottawa. Friend of the show, Travis Green.
Yeah.
Exhausting process, them looking for a new coach. Rick Bowness announcing his retirement, so you've got a new coach opening in Winnipeg. A lot of coaching jobs.
Well, I was just going to say, the coaching jobs that are available right now as we know it is what? San Jose, Winnipeg now?
Ottawa until Green officially signs.
Is that it?
No, there's like 7 of them. I'm trying to remember them all,
I feel
but
like
there's a lot of them.
Minnesota? Does Minnie have a new coach?
Yep. St. Louis has an interim. Like, there's interims.
Oh, yeah. Jim Hiller was the interim in L.A.
I can't imagine the coach firings next year after the bumps that happened. It is going to be rapid fire.
It's the move because there's so many no movement clauses and the salary cap is so restricting.
It's the move because there's responses after it happens.
Well, that factors into it, too, is generally you get a new coach bump. A lot of times you look at Rick Tocchet in the second round. Shout out to Vancouver.
Chris Knobloch
in Edmonton in the second round. They play, I think they start next Friday. Their round will begin. So we look forward to that. It's a joke. They start Wednesday, which is ridiculous.
Why is
insane?
Did you see the times
behavior
of the games?
Yes.
They play Sunday night at 10 o'clock.
Of course they do. Because I get it, the market, it matters.
Sunday at 10?
That's because of ESPN and TNT.
It's insane.
It's because they're like, those are 2 Canadian teams. Throw them on at midnight Eastern. Get them out of here.
The best player in the world is in the matchup.
Right.
I guess they just don't care about
Well, but that's the thing. I get it midweek. If you're in Vancouver, you don't care about the East Coast, nor should you.
Right.
You have to placate your market. I understand that. If I'm in Vancouver and I'm a ticket holder, I want to go do a game at 7 o'clock.
Right.
Screw everyone in Toronto and New York and all that. I understand that. Sunday, play at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 p.m. Why not?
Yeah, like prime time, even 5 o'clock.
Do whatever, but it's because there's other NHL games and there's NBA games.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
Perplex me.
I didn't know that. That's really disappointing.
I thought I read that today, but game 1 is Wednesday. It goes Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern. But they start in Vancouver. That's
I understand that. Wednesday night, that's going to be a late start.
Fine. Yeah.
I get that.
Friday's a late start. The Sunday, is 9:30 Eastern. But that's in Edmonton. That's a 7:30 Edmonton start. You could have gone 7 o'clock.
Easily. You could have gone 5 o'clock. Could have gone noon in Edmonton.
Yeah.
2 p.m. Eastern. Anyway, whatever. It is what it is. We're grasping at straws because there's only 2 Canadian teams left.
Man. Like, put McDavid on display for the North America to watch.
I know. Yeah, I know. You would think that would be the case.
But there's going to be teams that might have, like, I'm sitting there thinking of this Florida game tonight. Like, Boston might have a little momentum and some juice, and Florida might be, like, rusty and asleep.
500?
I like Florida tonight.
I mean, a dummying.
You think Florida's going to absolutely woodshed them tonight?
Murder them the whole series. It won't be a long
I don't
series.
think they'll crush them. Swayman's too good, man. I'll bet you it goes.
He threw the hand out there.
What are we betting on?
I'm saying a 5-pack, no more.
I think it goes 6.
Right there for 5 Gs.
5 Gs now.
Okay, whatever it is.
It doesn't matter. It's 5 Gs.
Boston is going to play the same system, and Swayman's going to play. I don't think you're going to crush Boston.
You're going to see, man. I've been right on all my predictions.
No, you weren't. You were 6 for 8 in the first round.
6 for 8. We were 7
for 8. And naturally, I went back to the.
I'm talking about the things that we discussed individually.
I see. Okay. I think Florida's going to win that series.
I do. I
don't
think
doubt
handily.
that. I don't think they're going to crush them. I think they're better than Boston. I think the Leafs would have been in the same spot. They would have got beat up by Florida.
Boston's got 2 guys that can score a goal.
But they play a system, and they got a great goal.
And they got a hell of a defense.
Ray.
That goes a long way.
People sleep on that Charlie Coyle. He's a hell of a player, too.
Yeah.
Like
Saka needs to snap out of it and arrive.
But
all right. Here's Ray Ferraro, our buddy of ESPN. Hey, Ray.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, we're doing great, man.
It's been a fun show.
We're having a great time.
Everybody just flying nothing but positivity, I assume?
Yeah, there's a lot of optimism. We're turning the page, and next year will be the year, right?
Feels like we just played golf, and we were 3 under par and made a 12 on the 18th, and we're sitting in the clubhouse right now trying to just stew it over.
I got the text, hey, do you want to come on tomorrow, whatever? And I sent Hayes a note. I go, I think we've done the same interview 7 years in a row. If we could pull back any one of the things, and I'm telling you though, I was sitting there, right? The goal goes in, and so right away I look to the right to see what Boston's doing. I look to the left, and there was nothing on the Toronto bench. We've all been there, right? You lose, and you just you can't believe it's bloody. It's all over. And what I thought was, if there was 8 ways to make for the Leafs to win something, they would find the 2 ways to lose. Mm-hmm. That was the first thought I had. I'm like the last 3 games were awesome, but they can't do it long enough. And you can say, oh, but that means they're on the way. But holy heck, again, it felt like the series was there for them.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I don't believe in this tortured stuff and all that, but when we get to the rink and right away there's that buzz that Woll might not play, my first, our first thought is are you kidding me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And so as much as and I know we're going to get into what should we do and how and all that stuff, there needs to be in my mind a scrub to kind of refresh everything. To try and lose all this slop that they've been carrying around with them and the bad luck and aside from the play, which we'll get into, but it just feels 10 times you can win. They can win 8 times, but the other 2, when it matters, they're going to find those 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were that's where I was going to go with you, Ray. Joseph Woll not being available. So you get to the rink at 4:00. I'm sitting there just preparing for the game, and I see some rumblings online. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You're in between the benches. You're getting, some insight. He looked fine to get off the bus. He looked he took morning skate. All of a sudden he's not available. You're just as shocked as everybody else?
Stunned. And, Samsonov was in the other net, and I don't know how sometimes you always think, oh, they're throwing a curveball in the morning and he's going to go in the starter's net and all that stuff. And we had our availability with Sheldon Keefe before, and somebody asked him about Matthews first, and he said, we got a couple of things we're going to have to decide right at game time, meaning I'm not telling you. And then he was asked about, and this is just in a group of 5 or 6 people, and he was asked about Joe Woll, and he said, hey, we've got a couple of things we got to figure out, at game time. So we walked away and we're like, did he just tell us that Woll might not play? Oh. But he didn't say anything, and he didn't. I got to tell you, I know there's going to be a lot of heat on Sheldon over the next bit here. The last 3 games 5, 6, and 7, I have never seen him more calm, more sure, less combative, maybe is the word. But I just saw man, he's locked in, he's got it here. His move, taking Reeves out to put Gregor in might not seem like much, but all of a sudden Toronto was way faster than Boston on their 4th line. And it mattered. They had good shifts. And so I thought, that's why I thought they had a real chance, was it just seemed a lot of the things they were doing were starting to pay off. But when Samsonov came out of the tunnel, honestly, I just did it again. I kind of laughed. I'm like, of course it's Samsonov. It's of course it is, right? It's lunacy. And then the game goes on. They get the goal, and sure enough, within a minute and a half, it's 1-1. That's what I mean. That next, we all know, those next couple, 3, 4, 5 minutes, if you can just get through it, then the building starts to get nervous and tension builds, and you're in a really good spot on the road. And they couldn't get through it. And it's in the net, and then they just kind of, I thought they hung on at the end to get to overtime, and then overtime's a crapshoot, and you're looking for somebody to make a play, and their best guy made it, and that was it.
Ray, I get some notes even today on Twitter, and people are like, "You're too hard on Marner. You guys love going after Marner." Some of the players are saying you guys always are looking for a scapegoat. You watched him close up in between the benches. Please do tell what you saw so people don't think that we're nuts.
Okay, so of course I know you guys are going to ask, right? So I'm like, okay, so I want to be fair, right?
That's all. That's all we ever do. We're not morons. We don't make stuff up. We talk about what we saw.
I thought he was either hurt or uninterested.
Yeah.
That's what I through the whole series, because at no point, well, I shouldn't say at no point. In Game 7, one time mid-third period, he made an unbelievable play. He came up high, he got the puck, he ditched DeBrusque, and then he went around somebody else, and he had a great scoring chance coming right down the gut. And as that happened, I thought, that's the first time I've heard his name tonight.
Yeah.
Like that, the first time. And so, to me, he looked like disconnected from it all. I know, like, all those guys are going to get clobbered and probably are getting clobbered. But at the end of the day, you got 7 games. Nylander played a couple of games. The first game, he was, he looked like he'd been out for a while. And then he scores 3 goals. Marner got 1 goal in the series. In Game 7, you didn't have to be great. You needed to be great for one play. Any of them. Mm-hmm. One play. That's it.
Maybe on the power play, Ray. Like, how do you explain that power play? Yeah. Good God.
Well, okay, so just switch to the power play. For X number of years, they've had Morgan Riley on the point. As great as Draisaitl and McDavid are on that Edmonton power play, and they are otherworldly, they have a guy that shoots missiles standing in the middle of the ice in Evan Bouchard. And so if Bouchard's not there, then the penalty killers can cheat a little bit out to the elbows and try and keep the puck away from McDavid and Draisaitl. But they can't, because you got this guy that shoots 100 miles an hour right down Main Street. The Leafs don't have that weapon. They don't. I did the game yesterday, the Rangers game. They had 2 power plays, guys, in the first period. They were on the ice for 23 seconds. They scored 2 goals.
Every guy touched the puck. It was unbelievable.
The one goal, Noodles, I guess it was the first goal.
It was advantage.
They made five passes in 7 seconds. It was in the net.
Yep.
5 of them. Like, how does that even happen? It was like Carolina had their sticks turned over in practice. Yep. It was like zip, 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 zip. So all this stuff, to me, leads to where we've been for the last 7 years. What are you going to do? What are you going to change? And I know contractually they got all kinds of things they got to deal with there. It's just not right. They can all say they want to come back. Too bad. I want to be 6 foot. I never was. I tried every year. But it just does it. This grouping of players cannot find the way to move forward. And they've had plenty of chances in plenty of different scenarios, and it's all come up to the same thing. 10 times to win, or 10 chances to win, they find those 2 chances and lose. Mm-hmm. And eventually, doesn't management, doesn't the owners, do they not go, okay, no more. We have to look at a different way to go forward, because this is not it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think ultimately the first answer is going to be Shanahan and his future, because he's the guy at the top, right? He's been here for 10 years. As I said last hour, sometimes it's not that deep. You've been here 10 years, you've won 1 playoff round. 10 years is an eternity in pro sports. And what I think has happened is, he did a lot of great stuff early in his tenure here. Really great stuff in terms of reigniting the history of the team, right? Making them respectable again. getting the right guy behind a bench. We know it fizzled out, but getting Babcock and then bottoming out and drafting these star players, and they all came up together. And then something shifted where it either became just okay to be really good in the regular season and make sure you make the playoffs, or it became more about this core four is going to win, and I don't care what anyone else says. Like the core,
defiant?
Yes, basically defiant, and essentially they will win and the Leafs will benefit, as opposed to the Maple Leafs are going to win, and we're going to do whatever we have to do to make sure the Maple Leafs win. It's no. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares will throw Riley in. They will win. We will prove it to you.
Right.
They will win, and then as a result, so will the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
And that's been the case, I think, for 3 or 4 years, Ray. And it's got to change.
It does have to change because it doesn't work. It just, and nobody can convince me that it works because it hasn't. And you could say it could be next year. Okay, sure, it could be next year. With all due respect, do you think John Tavares is going to get faster between now and next October?
Negative.
Well,
Right? If you can't, right? That's not going to happen. If for whatever reason they don't move Marner, because they're not going to move Nylander and they're not going to move Matthews. If they can't move Marner, do you think he's going to be more energetic, more enthusiastic?
How could you be?
Oh my gosh! Even today, I hate year-end availabilities because somebody always sticks their shoe in it. But to say we're gods around here and that whole thing was I don't know. I don't even know what to call it.
well, then the other guys went to the well.
Yeah.
They went to the well for him. Matthews and Nylander, accused the media of calling, he's a scapegoat, and you guys are always on someone, and it was like that was pre-planned that they were going to go out and protect Mitch.
Well, it could be, or they knew it was coming, because the reason you would know it was coming because everybody knew how the series went.
Yep.
Right.
Right? It's not like, guys, I say we know this, from our teams, you have a pretty good idea what's coming down the pike once the season's over. We all have a pretty good idea because we just lived it. Rarely is somebody completely surprised and, whoa, I didn't see that line of questioning coming. We all got a pretty good idea. And even you can go back to when Marner came back from his ankle injury. And I think people were really happy to have him back. That was my read. Happy to have him back. And now the team can get going again, or, in full health. It's going to take a while, but then he'll be in full health because, things had been going pretty well. And you could see this new way of that they were trying to play. And you could see that there were starting to be some seeds planted that were growing that, hey, this could be their way. And somebody asked him the first day about, a high ankle sprain. And remember, he was really pissy about it. If there's no information, people are just going to go on what they think they know, and they asked about it. There was a whole different way to answer that question. And why I think that's instructive or important is that it seems like he's just totally worn down by all of this. And do you think it's going to be different in October?
Well, Ray, I wanted to ask you, if you were responsible for putting the team on the ice in October and they said you had 3 transactions or 3 plays, what would they be?
There's no... But are we talking about in theory or with what we have?
They would be attempts. Obviously, there's roadblocks in the way, but what would you attempt to do?
Okay, I think the 4 have to be broken up. Again, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. And sure, maybe it could work. I don't know, but it's got to be broken up. Mm-hmm. I would go to John and say, is there any place you would go? Any place. And I have a lot of respect for how hard he works and prepares. I really do. And I think he gives everything that's there. But I would say, would you even explore this thought? And basically, because he has a no move, he would tell you no or these two places. Like you might get as small a list as that. I think you have to look at it, or you're going to have to go through another year because he holds all the cards.
If he says no, what do you do with the captaincy?
You know what? I haven't even thought of that. It's been done before, and it's been done really effectively before, where you change captains while the same captain he becomes the ex-captain, and it's been done with disastrous circumstances. Right? It would depend on, I think, in the relationship between the two players.
Okay.
Like that's what I think that would, to me, that's almost like we'll get to that if we have to get to it.
Right. Okay, that's your first move is Tavares. Continue.
That's the first one. Second one is it seems to me, no matter what was said today, that the frustration, the weight of expectation, of pressure, and Marner are not marrying right now. Like, I'm not looking at Nylander and Matthews. Not a chance. I on my team, those two guys are there all day, and they're at the top of the lineup. I would look at, again, and you got to go to Mitch and say, because of his contractual status, can you give me 5 teams? And he might tell you to go take a leap, which, of course, he can do. And then you have to say, well, just so you know, there is no extension.
Right.
Like you can't get bullied into that.
No,
like,
that can't happen. Can't happen.
You got to drive your heels into the ground here. They should have done this before last July. They didn't. And then they, before all the no moves kicked in, and now you're stuck. So let's assume you can't do either of those. That defense cannot be the same.
Yeah.
It just cannot. So my third move is I'm looking at, I'll tell you who I thought. I thought McCabe and Lyubushkin were awesome in the series, which is, to borrow an old line from Mike Babcock, good for them, bad for the team. Right. Like, they were terrific, both of them. I thought they were. Yeah. So Lyubushkin, I think if you want to bring Joel Edmondson back, you have to say, what does he cost? Because I think there's some other teams that are going to be probably pretty interested. And if they're interested at a certain level, can I get 80% of the player for 50% of the price? And the answer is going to be yes. And so I need to balance my team better on the back end with the physicality and size and heft that they clearly wanted, but you got to be able to move the puck.
Right.
And that it became a bad balance at the back. They had too many guys that were clunky and don't move the puck. And that hurts your offense too. And it's, you look, and that's the other thing about the playoffs. For 4 forwards that were put together because they can score, what's the one thing that killed the Leafs in every playoff run?
They can't score.
They can't score.
14 games in a row, they didn't score more than 3 goals. In 13 of the 14, they didn't even get to 3.
Yeah.
And so,
it's absurd.
Like, all of this stuff, like, you have to be able to say, okay, I have zero emotion and I'm looking at the team.
Yep.
Like, whether you're, it doesn't matter. The fans are going to have emotion. Of course they are. And that's just the way it is. But if you're looking at it honestly, you have to look and go, what didn't and don't we do in the playoffs? We don't score. That has to change. And if you're going to change it, the personnel has to change around it.
Yeah. I'm with you on all that. I mean, I think the Marner conversation, that's going to be emotional because of, who he is, what he represents. Like Tavares, John would be the first one to tell you, he knows he's not getting $11 million next time. Like, he knows, whether it's with the Leafs or any of the other 31 teams.
There is no next time. There's not an extension. I'm sorry. Like, the people that think that there is one, they're not looking at that.
I would personally move off completely and just say we have to completely change where we're going here. But he's going to be an NHL player.
That's right.
He's still in the league, and someone's going to pay him.
They gave him $80 million, and it hasn't worked. They haven't won, and he's 35 plus years old. That's
Right.
Sorry.
Yes, but again, he's playing somewhere in the league. I wouldn't do it here. I would completely move off.
Right.
If he's going to be here, you go to him and say, you're the new Jason Spezza. You can stay for $1 million on one-year deals. If you're comfortable with
But
that.
you know how difficult it is to have a guy that was the captain of your team and then bring him back to be the fourth line?
That's why I don't think it can happen.
That's right.
I'm
It cannot
agreeing with
happen.
you.
It's so difficult to have say in certain situations, and then all of a sudden you're just a plug on the back of the bus saying, hey, are we golfing? No.
I agree with you. What I'm saying is Marner's still in his prime, and Marner is still a believer that he is deserving of a raise.
Right.
He isn't, in my opinion, but the Leafs screwed this up so badly 5 years ago with one of the worst negotiations in salary cap history. And the irony of it is, I'm sure they wanted to give him 8 years, and he didn't want it because he didn't want to get too far away from Matthews and Willie getting new deals. And he was probably thinking back then, when I come up next time, have 15 ready for me because we're going to have a cup or two, and I'm going to be this and be that. And now he's up, and I think they actually might move on him. And if he had 2 more years at 11 with a full new move, he could say, I'm not going anywhere, and there's nothing you can do about it.
But to Ray's point, too, if we're reading through the lines there, too, of his narrative, the way he's been talking, he might have a conversation in the next couple of weeks with his family and go, it might be
We
time.
need a fresh start.
It might
and
be
that
time.
might be the best play for
I
him,
don't know.
for every party.
That's where I was going to go with
agree
Ray
with
is like, there might be a scenario where you've gone to him, but he might have come to you and said, yeah, like it, there's a common ground here to move on.
Hey, fellas, I'm back after
Yeah,
my
we got
big
you.
my shocking
No
phone
problem.
work.
We're just talking Marner and his and the elephant in the room here because he's still in his prime, Ray, and he's going to want even more money than he's already making right now.
And here's the other part to that becomes really difficult is that you decide, okay, we're going to make a deal, and his camp says, yes, okay, let's explore a deal to one of these couple of places. And the other team says, oh, really? Thanks for coming and calling. What do you think you're getting back? They know that there was not a desperation, but a want, a need to move a player that produces at an extremely high rate
Right.
in the regular season. They know that Toronto's not looking for 3 draft picks in the next 7 years, right? Like 3 first-rounders. Like that's obviously not what you're trying to do. So think about it and go, well, where could that be? Who would be willing to give up one of their best players, because that's what the deal has to include. And the deal has to include, if you want the return to be better, the discussion of can he, pick his team. It's kind of like being a free agent.
It's like Kachuk all over again.
Right, and negotiate that deal before the deal's completed. Like the complication of this is very high.
Well, and we were talking off air too, Ray, is there's not a ton of teams that have $13 million just kicking around and a bunch of assets, and the teams might not be respectfully top tier teams.
He may not want to go there.
But that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like, the fit, there's not 5 teams that are a perfect fit if he decides to move on. Because if he goes, hey, I'd like to, maybe look at a different scenario, it might be a team that needs to get to the floor in Utah. It might be Columbus that's looking to, again, to grow, to try and be a playoff team. I think there would be suitors because he is a top tier player, but it might not be, hey, we're Mitch Marner away from winning the Stanley Cup. Like there's players that want to go because, hey, I want a chance to win. It might be he's going to go to a different setting to try and help his team get to that next level. It might be Chicago, teams like that have young bases and want to get going. I don't know if he'll want to do that. That's the other thing,
That's a
too,
good question. I don't know.
Well, and if he doesn't, then they're going to have to somehow muddle through this year or take a return that they don't really like. Like, Jamie, you mentioned two teams that I think a lot, as soon as people dig into this, like, the media digs into this as what's possible, is those are 2 teams that have well, both of them have 8,000 draft picks.
Right.
And Utah would probably, doesn't that seem weird?
It does seem weird.
Utah's in the mix.
I was talking to somebody today, and I called them Arizona 3 times. I'll probably call them Phoenix next week, too.
Yep.
But, they have maybe players you could look in the scenario of, that could be a player. With Chicago, who is it?
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean,
they're so far on the bottom of the rebuild. The Blackhawks is, would you like Lucas Reichel? He played half the year in the American League. Or 3/4 of the year in the American League. That's like their first rounder from 2 years ago. Is that the guy? Probably not. Or a guy? Is it Kevin Korchinski, who was their first rounder from 2 years ago? Probably not.
Right.
Those things aren't moving the needle in Toronto. But where are you going to get to move the needle if you're Brad Treliving? Because you were just so stuck contractually that with the no move clause. It's like you're so stuck. There might not even really be an option to it.
Yeah.
Ray, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Or you could end up with Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I was just going to say PLD might be available.
Maybe a 1-for-1 for PLD. You see, Rob Blake came out and said, we're not going to buy this guy out.
I don't think it can buy him out. Doesn't his extension kick in this year?
Yeah, but there's a clause.
1/3. Right.
If you turn 26, he turns 26 in like a month. If you buy him out today, it's
1/3.
It's even better than that.
Yeah.
It's even better than that. Talk about a guy winning the proverbial lottery. If they wanted to buy him out, they cannot buy him out until 48 hours after the Stanley Cup. That's the Stanley Cup's awarded. That's the first buyout window. His birthday is 1 day before Game 7 of the scheduled Stanley Cup.
Insane.
Sweep. Sweep.
It's like crazy, is it? You're like, could you imagine if that's something they were thinking about, and they'd be in the finals, and they're like, oh, please win, win,
please.
Eddie O at the track.
Eddie would just be like,
Chris, come on,
sweep.
Who's ever in the finals?
Yeah, that is wild, man. And he'd probably be like, thank you, I'll take the cash and go sign somewhere else. Go play somewhere else.
It is. Just think of what they have to do. A team like LA. How are you talking? He showed he didn't bend his knees once this year.
He was so bad.
Was out there. He made $8 million to public skate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they just wanted him to be kind of good. He didn't have to be a star player, and he couldn't even be kind of good. Yeah. Scary stuff.
Because he is he's got everything you would want, and just apply yourself a little, kind of, maybe.
Dangerous stuff, man, to watch that, Wooly. Ray, just keep an eye on your phone, pal, on Wednesday morning, because white golf pants are making a debut.
Oh, come on.
I'm sending a video.
I got a question. What's the temperature? Are you coming in with 15 degrees, nice calm day, or are you? Okay, so
not
you're
too
not
hot.
Starting out.
Dude, I play early in the morning and it's cool enough. There's no need for concern at this time of year.
I would say the general level of concern from the four of us here, it's high.
There's concern, dude.
Angst.
Could be an ice age.
Level of concern? We're concerned about that?
Yeah, Nick Cage, dude. I'm worried about those pants because there's
I promised you and Bobby Mack and Ray that I'm going to send the warm-up video of me bent over twisting the driver.
You can never
ask me to stop drinking.
Ask me to stop drinking.
That's the level of concern we're dealing with. All right, Ray. Keep an eye on it Wednesday morning.
I'll be tuned in, boys. I'll be tuned in.
I love it. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Hey, you guys have a great day. Thank you.
You got it.
Ray.
There's our buddy Ray Ferraro. That's 8 years in a row we've done that. Yeah. 8 years in a row with Ray right after the Leafs go out. Here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Turn the page and talk about the Jays. We'll get into what the Jays are up to. Alek Manoah on the mound yesterday. Now we're talking. Or Taylor Pendrith. We'll talk about Pendy, too. Your boy Benny Coles, if he had white pants on yesterday, those things would have been in the ocean.
No, his caddy would have had to grab a giant tarp like they do at accident scenes to cover him up on the green, because that was a mess. A mess.
I don't know what was worse, the chunk chip or the missed 4-footer. Like, they were both horrendous. He didn't even touch the cup on the putt. Didn't even touch it.
The chip, and this is awful
horrendous.
to say, the chip looked like a sea flight guy that'd been drinking brown liquor all day, and he was so nervous trying to get up and down.
Yeah.
And it was the club
That's
championships,
horrendous.
and he melted.
That's the worst chip of his professional career by a mile.
Dude, he makes that chip 9 times out of 10 any day of the week.
Inside 5 feet.
Yeah.
Inside 5 feet. You put 100 balls there today with no crowd.
Yeah.
He puts 99 inside 5 feet.
That was sea flight with all the carts surrounded looking at it, like at the final when we were in their shootout.
All right, OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Something to chew on, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beer is always dialed in for game time. Hustle in your local BP tonight. So asking people, this has not been a positive Monday, which team needs a bigger overhaul, the Maple Leafs or the Blue Jays? And this is the tightest.
Yeah, it's 50-50,
It's
isn't it?
basically
Well, they both
50-50. That's the whole thing. There's been 1,200 votes, 51% Jays, 49% Leafs. It's as close as you can get, and they're both guilty of it. It's amazing what's happened here.
Dude, think about where we were 4 years ago or something. Like,
We had a decade of great sports. I said this last week. Culminated in an MLS Cup with TFC. The Raptors win in 19. Jays go to the ALCS in 15, 16, back to the playoffs the last couple of years. The Leafs were going to the playoffs every single year. Superstars in town.
Yeah.
Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Vladdy and Bo. And prior to that, it was Donaldson and Bautista, and Kawhi was here and Lowry. And now it's just like, what the hell is going on here?
someone just poured some gasoline on the city sports
Yeah.
and lit it on fire.
That you had your fun, and now you're in the position you're in. And listen, to be fair, the Leafs are still a good team. They're not a mess.
Right.
And the Jays they're playing like an awful team.
That was
Like, their
nonsense.
bullpen's a mess.
Like that, what was going on yesterday.
Manoah
Dude,
coming
hang
up.
on a second here. They are a mess.
They are
okay?
a mess. Who, the Leafs?
That's right. Because the teams that you say are a mess that don't make the playoffs, they played 14 more days than those teams. So
Yeah,
that's a mess.
Valid. You're right. They're not close to a cup. What I'm saying is the Raptors are a mess.
Right.
Like, they're brutal.
Bottom
They're
two.
scorched earth.
Yes, like they're one of the worst teams in the NBA.
Right.
The Leafs are not, the equivalent of what
They're
the
a 100-point
Raptors
team this
are.
year.
Yeah, like that's what I mean by that. It's a cop-out. I understand.
But
They're not
they-
close to championship contending, and neither are the Jays. I guess that's what's at the core of it. None of these teams have a legitimate cup or championship window that is open right now.
The biggest challenge, though, is where do you, moving forward, where do you go from here? It seems like the Raptors are kind of set in this, hey, it's
We ripped the
rebuild,
Band-Aid off.
We ripped the Band-Aid off, rebuild. Leafs are in a rebuild mode. They've got to figure out, retool's the wrong word too, just reshaping what it looks like, what this group looks like. That they're in reshaping mode.
It could be a step back, though.
But that's what
I
I'm
think you
saying.
got to
You're gonna-
brace for that.
But
It could be a step back before you take two forward.
But that puts you back into, you're going to be scraping, you'll be in that scraping for the playoff mode, 95, 100 points, in that range, 90 to 90, depending on who you bring in. I can't definitively say that. There's too much.
Yeah.
But it's, now you've put yourself into a scenario where you have to reshape the team a little bit if they decide to go down that direction. But you're going to have money to do it if you move players out. And it's who you bring in that's important. And keep in mind, maybe a kid this Cowan makes it out of training camp and he's a young kid. Maybe he's like the Wyatt Johnston in Dallas. Maybe it is a situation like that where you have some young players that push through and help your team speed up that reshaping.
That is, I think, mandatory. I think it's got to happen, right? You got to have players coming up on the cheap. You got to have players constantly filtering through your system.
Right.
You have to, because the reality is, it happens quick in pro sports. Using Dallas as an example, the role that Jamie Benn and Seguin play right now, that's Matthews and Nylander in like 5 years. Like 5 years is a long time, but it's not that far off. Right. They're not young. These are not kids.
Right.
Like they're 27 years old. Men. They're 3 or 4 years away from being the old guys that are maybe not leading anymore, but like they're in the group.
Yeah. Right. It's Wyatt Johnson and Robertson and those guys getting it done for the
and Heiskanen and Ottinger's 24 and now Stankoven's up who's 20. Yeah. Like and Ben and Seguin, they're getting paid the most, and they're the voices, and they're the faces, and they're the guys, and there's jerseys all over the place. Yeah. But they're not on the ice when it really matters.
No, if they lose, though, the microphone shouldn't be going to Ben and Seguin.
Right.
It's to the other guys that have skin in the game when the puck drops.
Right. And that's not where Matthews and Nylander and Marner and them are right now, but they're not far off. That's where Tavares is. Yeah. Like Morgan Riley's a couple years away from being in that role where it's like you've been around a long time and you're not a young guy. I think the Jays, but it's amazing how these two teams mirror each other from the top down. Like Shapiro and Shanahan are the same. Right. They got here at the same time. Yeah. They've been here a decade. And there's been ups and downs.
Something's got to give. Like, I know they keep saying with the Jays, it's still early, 100, but like something's got to give.
Well, their bullpen is a disaster, which doesn't help. That was something that they had built in last year that was great, and they thought it would be great this year. Swanson, he got injured at the end of camp. He started on the IL. He's just getting blown up every time he's in the game. And again, I don't know how Schneider continues to put him in those spots. Right. But he keeps putting him in, and he keeps getting buried. The bullpen's a mess. The staff isn't great, and their offense is anemic. I mean, and then yesterday when it arrives, they can't get it done. And like Manoah coming up is an example of how they've just run out of ideas. They don't know what else to do, and they're terrified to let him go because they're fearful. And this gets back to the Marner conversation. They're going to be terrified. This guy's going to go somewhere else and win.
And he could very well be a Phil Kessel situation.
It could happen.
He goes somewhere else and he wins a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it could happen. But in the same thing with Manoah. Maybe he goes somewhere else, he finds it again, and he turns back into the stud.
But it's not working in this setting.
It makes no sense he pitched yesterday.
Right.
And look at him. Look at his stats. What did he go? 3 2/3?
Unless there's a team that's looking at him going, get him up, get him into a game, and then we'll trade for him type of thing. Like there's always stuff behind the scenes.
I hear you, but
it was a weird,
they ran out of options.
Yeah, when I found out he was starting, I'm like, that's a little bit.
And they're going to stick with him.
Yeah.
And that's just forced, I don't know if it's bravado, ego, ignorance, just closing your eyes and praying, but they're like, screw it, man. We're in on Manoah. And he's gonna have to get it done for us.
He gave up a moonshot there.
He hung that slider,
81 miles an hour.
Dude, if you've never seen a hanging slider, you've lived on Mars and you just landed, and someone said, "Can you show me a hanging slider?" I'd say, "Throw the tape in Manoah yesterday." It was right down Broadway.
If you lived in Mars,
if you've just landed and said, "I've heard the term hanging slider, can you show me?" I'd say, roll the tape. Here's Manoah, and this is a hanging slider. 2 on, 2 out, 3-2 count, and it just goes to the moon.
Oh, geez.
And that wasn't even the one that ended the game. That was the first hanging slider.
Yeah.
It got worse to end his day.
I can generally get a vibe.
This
was the...
No, that's not even it. That wasn't the home run.
The 81 was the one that I had marked.
There we go. It's coming. If you're listening on radio, podcast, streaming, this is it right here. 3-2, 2 out, 2 on, hanging.
He had 2.
Yeah. I can get a vibe where things are going to get messy, and I can tell by the expression and the body language of some of their players where they know this is garbage, and it's going to start getting pissy around there real fast.
I agree. Well, they moved Bichette further down the lineup, but they're afraid to move Springer for some reason.
Yeah. Springer was supposed to be the closer there, signing a massive deal.
Yeah.
And he's got to be thinking, what kind of mess are we in now?
Well, and
he's probably like, check, please.
Manoah pitching, they're probably like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
We love the guy, but why is he on the mound?
Can't do it. He can't put him out there. It's Roark right now. Remember Roark a couple years ago?
Roark.
It is.
It's Roark.
Manoah. Finkel is Einhorn, and Manoah is Roark.
Overdrive continues. ESPN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, shout out to Taylor Pendrith. Shout out to Golf Canada, for that matter. They had their media day at Hamilton today.
Yep.
Beautiful day. Course looks phenomenal.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't because I was doing Sports Center and I knew today was going to be a big one.
Yelling and screaming at Glenn Sheeler.
I was yelling at Glenn. I wasn't yelling at Glenn. I was yelling with Glenn.
With Glenn.
And then Marty was yelling.
Was it Marty or Frankie?
Marty was yelling. Marty was inappropriately yelling.
Really?
I was, I think, very
I don't believe so.
calm, cool,
I think
and collected.
Screaming.
I don't believe you.
You probably shouldn't. Yeah, so I guess, they had their media day today. They said tickets are selling. Obviously, Nick Taylor's coming back. Taylor Pendrith will be there. Shout out to Taylor Pendrith. I love it. It's awesome to see him win on tour for the first time. And
You just see how he hits the ball, like the drives. He almost won in Detroit, and Tony Finau got him, but it was like if he just kept picking away at it, he was going to get one.
yeah,
That was a good field, good tournament, good field.
yeah. And now he's in everything, right? He'll be in all the big events. He's going to majors next year. He'll be at the
Cash, dude.
Masters.
Massive to get that
Massive, man. He crushes the golf ball off the tee, too. But yeah, he got it. And it always sucks when Ben Cole, like when another guy chokes. Because then he was
man.
No, I know. He doesn't. But in the interview, he's got to say, and he did with Amanda Balionis.
You know what it's like when you're playing a match with somebody and they do something stupid? You're like, I feel bad for you, but at the same time, I love
You're
watching.
so happy.
So happy.
When you play match plays with your
and the
buddy,
guy like just 3 jacks it to lose the hole. You're
it's
like,
the greatest
you're a
thing
loser.
ever.
You're a loser.
The greatest thing in the world is sitting there saying, "Oh, nice swing, a nice try." And you're
Nice
like,
try.
"Oh, that was brutal, and it was so good."
It sucks right now, and I love it.
That guy just slashed that shot so badly, and this is amazing. But man, tough break, bad lie. That's a tough shot. That's always my favorite. That's a tough shot, man. Tough lie.
Get him next time.
And I'm like, thank God.
This
you
is
just
what I
chili
usually
chunked
toss
that.
out. That's about as good as you could have done. For
Meanwhile, it's 30 feet past the hole.
Yeah.
Final hour coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.